Hello. Hello, hello. Welcome to our December live call. We'll see if other people are joining us, and if not, it might just be us, which would be also lovely. Let me know if in the chat. Let me know if you can see me and hear me okay. And of course, as always, whether you're here live or watching the replay, let me know if you have any questions on what we're talking about and everything like that. If you need me to do any follow-ups or anything like that, I'm happy to do so. Today, we are going to be talking all about juggling things as a multi-passionate. So when you have a lot of stuff going on in your life, in your business, how to kind of do all of that specifically with Productivity Powerhouse. So it's 2:30, so let's just dive right in. And as you're coming in, yeah, just say hello in the chat and definitely pop in any questions there or, comments, discussion, all of that is, as always, encouraged. So, hello, Rita. Hello. Welcome. Rita, tell me as well, how are you finding, how are things going for you in Productivity Powerhouse? Let us know. Today's topic was a question that came up in an email with one of your fellow Productivity Powerhouses. And I thought that it was a great question and something that I think all of us can really relate to. So I figured that this would be perfect, especially for this time of year when there's so much happening, especially around the holiday season. So this would be a good time to focus on this. Good. Okay, I'm glad that that's working for you. Yeah, working along when you can. Yes, there's also like definitely a lot of content, right? So as you're going through it, like if you find that you're getting stuck on anything, then just if you find that you're getting stuck on any of the workbook questions or anything like that, kind of just like going through to the best of your ability and then just like continuing on is really the best way to do it. Because sometimes if you're a little bit stuck on any one particular thing, then starting to like kind of move forward can give you that opportunity to then be like, oh, this is now clicking for me, right? So kind of like coasting through certain parts is totally okay if otherwise it's going to get stuck. Okay, you haven't gotten stuck yet? Awesome. That's great. I love it. Perfect. Okay, so to today's topic. So the question that came up via email was this. As I work through Productivity Powerhouse, I'm wondering your advice for focusing when I have more than one business or project. And in many ways, I look at my household, which includes a small bit of parenting, caring for a parent, and being the sole caretaker of a dwelling with all of its moving parts that range from plumbing to shoveling snow, internet maintenance, etc., and seems to take most of my time. And self, physical, mental health, emotional and spiritual health, relationships, passions, etc., and seems to get the most short-shifted on time. Looking at these as entities to be envisioned, planned, and strategized for, right? So in a nutshell, the question is really asking, how do I use all of these? How do I navigate all of this with business, especially when there's like more than one business, and like household, right? And your personal self. And then she followed up with this additional sort of clarification on the original question, which said, looking at this in terms of focusing within Productivity Powerhouse. So when the questions, for example, in the workbook, are related to business, so for example, what are the tasks that come most easily to you in business? She says, I get confused because I have more than one business, plus projects that perhaps could one day be businesses, along with a household, all of which have their own unique dynamics and they're interconnected, and all of which I want to run more efficiently. So she was kind of wondering, should I just choose one thing to work on? And so far going through it, she's been creating different responses for each part of her life, but that in and itself feels scattered and perhaps not productive. So this is, again, I think that this is something that's very relatable for a lot of us when you are looking at the different moving parts of your life and your business and trying to kind of connect all the dots. And this is a wonderful opportunity to look at how you as well can navigate all of that when it comes to Productivity Powerhouse. So that you can really use Productivity Powerhouse effectively as a framework for navigating all those moving pieces. If you do have a business that maybe has multiple different facets to it, if you're also very busy with your household, if you're also trying to do work on, self-development, self-care, anything with your like relationships and all that type of thing. So the key here is that you can view each of these as a separate yet integrated entity. All right. You can basically use the framework of Productivity Powerhouse for general kind of like longer term big picture planning to begin with. And then you can start reusing it for each smaller piece if you like. So that's kind of a way to use it, right? In general. Now, you kind of have like three options that I would recommend. And these are like the three options that I also recommended to this person. And so we can kind of like play with this and we can dive into this a little bit. So the first option here is that if you are feeling like you have a lot of different moving pieces and you're trying to figure out how you can use the Productivity Powerhouse framework for it, you can answer each question with each of the different components, right? So if you have three entities, business, household, and self, you can answer each question in those three parts, right? And so then you're basically going through, I just have the workbook right here. So then you're basically going through, and if you're answering, like let's just, yeah, okay. So in the self-leadership section, for example, that's like the very first section of your workbook, where it says, what self-leadership and self-management means to me. That's one of the questions in there. You could answer that in three ways. What it means to me, what self-leadership and management looks like in terms of my business, in terms of my household, and in terms of myself, right? You could do that. If you choose to go that route, then what you can do is go back, right? So go through the entire section of the workbook with that in mind, right? Like each step or each spotlight training, and answer it in those three parts, and then go back and look at them and assess where are the commonalities between your answers? What are the recurring themes that come up, right? What patterns do you tend to notice? Are you saying essentially similar things in your answers that connect back, and that actually it's kind of really the same answer, but you're just saying it in a different way for each of those different entities? Does that make sense? So you can kind of look at it for the recurring themes and patterns. And so that can be really helpful for being able to sort of see how they're kind of all come together. So let me know if that makes sense. That's kind of your first option for navigating all these moving parts and using the framework to do so, is to basically answer each question as separate entities and then compare them and look for the patterns and look for the recurring themes. Your second option is to answer the different questions under the umbrella of business, right? So if you are in the position where you are kind of, oh, excellent, wonderful, Kara, I'm so glad it makes sense. If you're in the position where you have a lot of different moving parts of your business, or if you have multiple businesses, or if you are multi-passionate, right? And so your business just has like a lot of different types of projects and stuff, then what you can do is answer each question with just one answer, but look at it in terms of the entire umbrella. So for example, bringing it back to that initial example question of your workbook, out of all different types of work tasks, what comes easiest? You're not looking at it in terms of this part of my business and this part of my business and this part, right? You're not looking at it in terms of the different businesses that you have. You're not looking at it in terms of maybe the different departments that you have for your business. You're looking at it in terms of the entire thing. What comes easiest to you and what comes hardest, right? And so you can look at it in terms of that very general sort of perspective. And if you are doing that, what I would suggest is that, you might start trying to overthink it. So if you start finding yourself like overthinking it, then just go with whatever pops to mind before moving on to the next question. So this option where you're looking at everything through the big umbrella of your business, this is exactly the same as if you chose to focus on just one small area. It's just on a larger scale, right? So that's option 2. Option 3 is, if option number 2 just feels a little bit too broad and vague for you, if you're like, I can't hold all of the different moving parts of my business in my head at the same time, then I would suggest choosing one specific area to focus on. That can be one specific area of your business. That can be one specific area if you're looking at it in terms of business, household, and personal life. Then you could look at it in terms of one of those, just pick one and then go through it like that. All right. So does that make sense? Does that help you kind of look at how you can put the moving pieces together? I want to note as well that when you are doing this, when you are doing anything related to Productivity Powerhouse, you are always bringing it back to the center of it all, right? And the center of it all is you. So when you look at it in terms of, I have my business or multiple businesses that don't seem to make sense, right? I have like multiple businesses going on. These aren't related, right? And then you're looking at it as, I also have my household and I also have my personal life sort of stuff, myself to deal with. The connection between all of those is always going to be you. You are at the center of it. Your values, your goals, your belief systems, your vision, right? All of these different pieces. The choices that you make are always going to be a reflection of who you are at your core. And so if you have a lot of different things going on in your life and your business, those things tend to be, to some degree, reflections of who we are, right? So the connection point between everything is always going to come back to you. And as a result, you can really start with that and everything sort of comes out from there. So I can kind of give you some examples of things in my own life and business. So hopefully this will start to sort of come together when we kind of see these examples. But the really important piece is that these things are not competing against one another. They're not competing for your attention. They're actually supporting one another, right? So, for example, with my own sort of situation, if we want to keep using these sort of 3 categories of business stuff and then household sort of things, right? Like household responsibilities and then sort of like personal self-care, that kind of stuff, then here's how I kind of navigate it. So I always bring it back. As I said, it always comes back to you, right? You are the center of everything, and everything's like a little, like you're a hub, right? Or a wheel, like spokes on a wheel type of thing. Everything is coming out of where you are at the core, at the center. So when I am looking at anything in my business, in my life, if I am going to make a choice, if I'm going to move forward on anything, if I'm trying to decide whether I should do this or that, I'm always bringing it back to, my values and my decision-making matrix as well, right? So my values, my personal values, my saganmorrow.com values are connection, adaptation, and intention. And, these have much, much bigger sort of definitions, but these are my 3 core values. And so what I'm doing is if I am making a decision in my business, which, I've just completed a big chunk of business planning, and so I've been doing this a lot lately, but when I'm making choices in my business, I will filter everything through those values. So I will be going through the Productivity Powerhouse framework with anything in my business filtered through those values. You're almost plugging it in after step 1. So step 1, you're identifying, this is what I want to do, right? This is, if you look at it through a business lens of what am I going to do with my business? What ideas do I have? You start with step 1. This is the idea that I have. This is the project that I'm kind of looking at. This is like the fun thing that I'm considering. Identifying that specific thing and then filtering it like kind of immediately after in terms of, does this connect back to the values, right? Is it rooted in those values? And then continuing on with the framework. This is how I'm now going to prioritize it. This is how I'm going to manage my energy around it and that kind of thing. Does that make sense? So you're going through the full framework with basically anything, but it's already rooted in those values. Therefore, it supports those values. Therefore, it all supports you. It always comes back to you. Okay. So A couple of the things I'm just thinking off the top of my head now, for my own business, when I am planning for 2023, looking at adding a lifestyle version of Productivity Powerhouse, right? And identifying like how does this fit into everything with my business, because it's something that I had kind of had an idea for back in the summer. Someone requested it, and it's been something I've been, mulling over for quite some time. And so when I had that idea, then it was looking at it through those values, right? How does it connect back? How does it have that sort of connective piece, right? How is it intentional? How is it adaptive, right? So those are the 3 values. And then sort of plugging that into my decision-making matrix, and then being able to see, okay, where does it fit in the priorities of my 2023 calendar, right? And moving forward with it like that. And household is the same sort of thing, right? It is automatically supported by those particular values. So everything that I might be doing with my household, all of the choices that I might make and the approach that I take is always going to be filtered through those values and done through the framework. You don't necessarily need to go through, the entire workbook every single time, right? For a lot of them, the steps are going to be moved through much faster than you sort of might think, right? So an example with household is, I'd moved to Kamloops about a year ago, and then a couple months ago went and picked up a bunch of ththings from Winnipeg that were in a storage closet there. And now that we have them in Kamloops, it's fantastic. We have some like boxes of a whole bunch of boxes. But here's the problem. The problem is that we live in a 700 square foot condo, and we don't have any storage unit. And so we need a place to put all of these boxes, right? And at the time in October, looking at the amount of boxes, the cardboard boxes full of paper files, right? The Rubbermaid containers full of electronics that we need to go through, bins of clothes, like just so many different bins and everything. We really didn't want to just start getting into, my spouse, Justin, Mr. Science, now you all know his name, Mr. Science, who I try very hard to not mention his name, but there we go. When we're sort of like looking at how we wanted to approach things with unpacking everything, we were really looking at, okay, we don't want to just start diving into this and having the entire condo just like covered in boxes for a while, right? What we want is to be able to set aside a specific few days to go through everything and then deal with it. As a result, the reason sort of like to bring this back is that when we were making that decision, I was tying that into those values and identifying, okay, when I'm thinking about what I want for my personal life and for my business, yeah, it comes back to these different values and to my decision-making matrix in terms of, I don't want there to be, I want it to be intentional, right? I want it to be very strategically done. I don't want to just haphazardly go through all these boxes, right? I want to be able to be very connected to what we're going through and to be able to make good decisions as we're going through it. Right. And I also want adaptability to be built into it, because some of these boxes might take a lot longer to go through than others. So therefore, I need a little bit of extra time to like be able to really have that sort of time set aside. So that's why we're kind of going through it during the holidays, right? So you can kind of see that this as a separate example can still be done through like sort of that same lens. And we plug it in through the Productivity Powerhouse framework by really looking at it in terms of, this is what we want to be doing with it. This is how we're going to prioritize it among with, routine household type of things, right? We're going to put these boxes in this particular corner where they're not visible, right? They're out of the way type of thing, which really helps with managing energy. So we don't have that stress level of constantly seeing these boxes all the time. Creating the strategies and organizing the tasks. We've already divvied up. We know which days we're going to be working on this. We know which one of us is going to be taking care of which boxes, right? So you can kind of see how you can use the framework, a very simplified sort of version of it, for basically getting anything done in your life and your business. So let me know if that makes sense, if this is helping you, if this is sort of coming together. Another example with self in terms of volunteer work is that I've recently joined the board of directors for the condo building back in Winnipeg. And it was past time for me to do that because that's a very small building. There aren't very many owners in that building. And making that choice could still be done through the framework and through those values, right? By looking at what is everything else going on in my life? How does this particular volunteer commitment fit into it? How does it connect back to my values? And then looking at it in terms of everything that I am doing as a volunteer board member in terms of the positions that I take on various issues, the way that I approach my role, right? So how I do things, like I'm the secretary, so I take meeting minutes. So how I am taking those meeting minutes, all of that always comes back to your own identity, vision, values, all of those types of pieces. So it's all interrelated, right? So one of the big things that I'm constantly going on about in these meetings is, our code of ethics as board members, right? I'm constantly sort of bringing that up because that's a very important component that's built into my values, right? And then, when we're looking at it through that framework lens of Productivity Powerhouse, it comes, again, you can just sort of plug it in. You can just plug it in terms of like, okay, I know that I need to, that the meeting's going to be on this particular day. I need to be able to have my things that I promised that I said that I would do. I need them to be done before the next meeting, right? So then kind of working backwards with the task list. Gamification has been another big part. I realized that I wanted to definitely write a play about a condo board and write a comedy about it. And so now I get to basically view board meetings as like a fun research project for the play that I'm going to write, right? So like all of these different pieces, it can come back to how you want to approach it, how it's going to make everything feel really good and connected for you, so that they're not all separate entities. They all come back to your own vision and values. They always come back to how you want to approach things and your belief systems and all of that. Is all of this making sense? I feel like I've gone off on several tangents here. I hope that this is kind of making sense and being a little bit helpful for you all. But you can really go through the framework through like very quickly like that, right? So you can kind of like look at the framework in terms of like just kind of jumping through each of the 9 steps as like an overall sort of piece. And so sometimes you're going to be staying longer on certain steps than others. Some of these steps you can just sort of cycle through really quick, right? And when it comes to like household stuff, right? Like on a day-to-day basis, things like having the gamification built into it and having fun with it, right? Like I might spend a lot more time looking at it in terms of the step 3, right? Manage your energy, and like step 8, having that sort of gamification built into it and kind of like coasting over the other steps because they aren't as important. Although like step 2, right? They're still built in, but you might not spend as much conscious time on them, right? So if I am looking at my household requirements, for example, good. Okay, I'm very glad that this is helpful. Wonderful. I can't remember if I might have mentioned this already, or maybe I mentioned it on my Instagram stories a while back. I might have mentioned it on a previous call here, but one of the things that I always do with managing household sort of things is that at the end of every weekend, on Mondays, basically, I'm always coming back and I'm like, okay, it's time to like clean the house, right? Because after the weekend, like I don't really take care of the house or do anything on the weekend. It's just nice, fun, relaxing time. And what I find is that it's very much like if you give a mouse a cookie, he'll want a glass of milk. Does anyone remember that book from way back in the day? It's a great kids book. But I'm very much like, I'll be like, okay, well, it's time to vacuum, right? And I'm like, well, but if I'm going to vacuum, then I actually want to wash the dishes, because then like the counters, like I need to like clean the counters, right? And then it'll be like, well, if I'm going to vacuum, then I also I need to like wash the towels, right? And like, well, I might as well wash the bath mat on the bathroom floor as well. And so like, then it's like all of these different pieces need to sort of come together, and they all kind of need to happen at the same time. And then it's like, well, if I'm going to be doing all this cleaning, then I'm going to like wash my hair afterwards, right? I'm going to like shower and wash my hair afterwards. If I'm going to go through the trouble of washing my hair because it's ridiculously long, then I'm also going to like wash the bedding. And if I'm going to wash the bedding, then so it becomes this like ongoing thing. So all of those thoughts in my head could be very scrambly, right? But they're not, because again, when we bring it through the Productivity Powerhouse framework, you're basically going through that and looking at, okay, well, step one, what I want, identify your desires. I want a clean house by the end of today, Monday, right? When it's a Monday that I'm always doing this. And then it's looking at, okay, what makes sense in terms of the order of operations, right? What needs to kind of be done first to make the next one make sense? If I know that I'm going to be doing all of these different things, then what's the order of operation for this? What makes the most sense? And then tying it into, you know, the energy management piece and the gamification of it with like playing great music that like feels more fun for me, right? And like adding in all of those pieces so you can really go through this framework on a day-to-day basis and have it all going through like that. And again, a lot of this, as you're doing this, the more and more that you do this, the more and more that you are applying the framework to all different aspects of your life and your business, the more automatic it's going to be, and the more that you're going to be doing it at a very subconscious level, so that it'll seem like there's just very specific steps that you are focusing more on, because those are like bigger things for you to kind of need to do, but you'll actually be doing the other steps at a slightly more subconscious level. You'll still be kind of like sort of like skimming through them and just like skating or coasting through them. Okay, that example of Monday cleaning was helpful. Good. I'm glad. Let me see. Yeah, like, so okay, if that example is helpful for you, then a couple of other examples, you know, going through when I was moving last year, right? Because we first moved to Kamloops back in summer, autumn of 2021. And looking at that, right, there was the kind of the bigger steps that I was focusing on, still going through the full Productivity Powerhouse framework, but it was really, you know, like looking at burnout management. That was a big one, right? Like, or burnout prevention. That was a really big piece to really make sure that, you know, with moving to a brand new city that I'd only been to like once before for basically a day, right? Like looking for a place to live, moving to a place where we didn't know anyone, right? Setting up a new office, getting all those types of things, right? So like looking at all of that, having that sort of energy management piece and burnout prevention was really, really, really big. Steps 4 and 5 were also really big, right? Because they were very much mapping out all of the different things that we needed to be doing when you're moving, not just to a new city, but also to a new province, right? Like things like healthcare and gain a new driver's license, a BC driver's license rather than a Manitoba driver's license. Like all of those different things, mail forwarding, right? All of that can feel so overwhelming. But again, when you look at it through the Productivity Powerhouse framework, you basically, it's all right there. So I go through it. Like I literally will just be going through it and be like, all right, first I need to do step 1, then step 2, then step 3, right? Anytime that there's a lot of stuff going on. And so it was very straightforward to break down all of those big things happening and break it down to all those tasks. So having those there, steps 4 and 5 are pretty big. Step 5 especially, I would say, that was like a big one that I was spending a lot of time on, was like organizing tasks and making sure that everything was like highly strategic, right? And then, you know, like with step 6, simplifying everything. So after everything was kind of mapped out, to really look at, okay, how can we make sure that we're not overcomplicating things, that, you know, everything makes sense that we're trying to do with moving to a new place without, you know, dropping the ball on business, right? And that kind of thing. So that was a key aspect. And then, you know, with the 2023 planning that I've done, as you can see right behind me, I have like the entire year of 2023 mapped out, and like up higher, I have things for the next 3 years sort of planned out. But really looking at it in terms of, with steps 1 and 2, I spent a lot more time on those 2 steps of the framework, really identifying, as a multi-passionate, how do all of these different things fit together? How does all of this make sense? And how to make that really good progress on everything that I want to be doing. Particularly because I have experimented and pivoted so much with my business over the years. So some aspects have gotten unwieldy, right? My email marketing, my email ConvertKit is a little bit unwieldy. And if you have received, 3 emails a day from me for a number of weeks, then you will be aware that it's a little unwieldy. And I'm really looking forward to taking that, going through all of that, right? So again, it becomes this kind of process that you go through with the framework. So that'll be one of my big projects I'm very much looking forward to working through in the new year. Yeah. So those are kind of just a few examples of how all this comes together. What are we all feeling and thinking about all of this? Do we have any questions? Do we need clarity on any of this? Does all of this make sense? Can you see how these are all might be separate entities, but they all still come together and they all still connect back to you, right? If you're struggling at all with trying to figure out which sort of piece to focus on first, always start with yourself, right? Always start with what your values and belief systems are and all of that type of thing. Because once you know that, everything else comes from there. Everything. So it can then become much easier to then move forward, right? And if you've gotten to that point, to that part of creating your decision-making matrix, then basically at any time that things start feeling, like you're too scattered, you can sort of bring it back and funnel it through your decision-making matrix. Is there any direction in Productivity Powerhouse for identifying those 3 values? Yes. Ooh, actually, okay, this is a good question because we have a section on values. We talk about your values. We talk about your connective threads. Let me see. Okay, it's in step 1 and step 2 is where we get into these pieces. Hold on a second. Let me bring up my handy workbook. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, so we go into your values and identifying them in step 1, and then in step 2, and kind of mapping them out. And then in step 2, you're noting what your core values are in your connective threads. And then in step 6, we have the decision-making matrix where your values again get plugged in. But I'm trying to think if we really explain how to identify those 3 values. I'm trying to think if I've included that, because if I have not, then that would probably be a great thing to include. So is that then something you've been struggling with to identify what those values are? Yes. Okay. All right. Did you go through, have you completed the step 1 workbook questions? Let's start there. Still very quick. Okay, you have. All right, awesome. So what I would then suggest is when you are going through it, right, when it's asking you in the lifestyle goals and personal values sort of section, it's going through what's the stuff that I care about, right? All of these sorts of different pieces. I would say go through it and start and go through what your answers were. And again, sort of start looking for those recurring themes. What are the patterns that are coming up for you, right? That can be a good way to sort of start thinking about what these values look like. The other thing that I will mention, and I think I included this in the lesson, but maybe I didn't. If so, I apologize. Is that your definition of your values will, and the words themselves, they don't need to be set in stone, right? They're probably going to evolve as you and your business grow and as you change, but the essence of them is still going to remain the same, right? So if you really think about, what matters most to you, what your driving forces are, the way that you describe them and the way that you talk about them will likely change, because as time goes on, we get a deeper understanding of them, right? But the basic concept of them is always going to remain the same. So with my, and I'm trying to, I don't have it open right now, but this would be a good thing to look at. With my values of connection, adaptation, and intention, I had called them something different, I believe, in the past. I think I had different words, but I meant essentially the same thing. And I'm trying to think of what they were. I'm going to have to go back and check my previous business plans and bring that, because I think that would be a really fun. Would that be helpful for you guys? Would you want to do a call on that, to do about values and everything and how that sort of changes and like what that can kind of look like? Yes. Okay, wonderful. Start with studying the patterns. Yes, that's helpful. It's affirming to know they will emerge from the exercises. Yeah. And as with anything, I would say, like, don't overthink it too much. I would, again, because the essence of it is going to remain the same, right? Like, who you are is who you are, and your understanding of it is just kind of going to deepen. Yeah. So that, yeah. And I mean, of course, we can always, like, if you're really stuck, you're welcome. If you're really stuck with it, after you kind of go through it, look through the patterns and that kind of thing, we can always book a one-on-one call, and like I can help you directly with it and like look through your workbook and work through like identifying the patterns, and we can come up with those values together if you like. So that's always an option as well. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So are there any other questions? I'm going to just check if there's anything else that I wanted to share about this. Let me see. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions, comments, anything at all. And yeah, if that appeals to you, if you all want to do a call on values, then we can certainly do that in the future. Let me know as well. Is there anything else that you want me to elaborate on or build on that we talked about today, or anything else that you would want me to be talking about in a future call? Those ones haven't been scheduled yet. So that would also be good. Let me know in the chat, or if you're watching the replay, email me. Let me know if particular, like, does this time of day, this day of the week work well for you? Are there other ones that would work best for you? Let me know, because I want to make sure that this is useful for as many people as possible. And we can always change the times and the days from one call to the next. Let me see, what else do I have here? Okay. Yeah, I think that was basically everything I wanted to mention. Good. Okay, good. Yes. Wonderful. Yeah. Yes, I'm always available for one-to-one. I posted I actually just released it, saganmorrow.com/sessions, if you want to book a call. There it is in the chat. Thursday's a tricky day. Okay, this is great to know. Wonderful. All right. Okay, perfect. Are there particular days that work best for those of you who are here right now? Let me know. What would be your like ideal day or your ideal time of day with the time zone that you're in? Because like I'm happy to change these up and do them on different days of the week, different times of day. I'm happy to just sort of make this work for as many people as possible again. Yeah. So keep me posted. And if you want to kind of think about it and then email me afterwards, that works too. Yeah. But I would really say, to kind of recap, to wrap up what we've been talking about today, when you feel like you have a lot of different moving pieces going on, always start with your personal life, start with your own core values, belief systems, and move forward from there. Create, if you're not really sure what to focus on with Productivity Powerhouse, do it all through that kind of lens. Do it through like an umbrella lens of your business, and then start going back through the framework with the different like sort of smaller pieces that you can kind of do it on a smaller scale almost. And if you are going to do that as well, then I would definitely say go through the Scale Up Your Success Spotlight training. It's the spotlight training for step 9 of Productivity Powerhouse. And it has, I think there's like 6 different examples of using the framework for different smaller areas of focus, like growing your business. I think like starting a podcast, I think like writing a book, a few different options like that. So that might be a really helpful way as well for you to kind of look at different examples for how it all works together. All of the different pieces within your life and business are connected. Even if they seem separate, even if they seem like they are very disconnected, even if they seem like they are separate entities, they are not. They are all connected because they all come from you. They all come from your vision, your values, your beliefs, and or your choices, right? Yes, of course, lifestyle circumstances and external things absolutely 100% come into play. But at the same time, how we respond to those different external circumstances is an important factor to consider, right? So when you're looking at any of this, it always comes back to you. And so you can really go through it through that lens. Yeah. It's all connected. And if it feels like like there's a disconnect, then that's a sign to look for the patterns, look for those recurring themes, and take that sort of step back from it. Mondays and Wednesdays are good. This time is generally good. Okay. This is good to know. Good to know. Awesome. All right. Well, yeah. If there are no other questions, then we might just wrap this up. And again, when there's any disconnects in your life or your business, when it feels like things are too disjointed, that's a little alarm bell. That's a little flag for you to figure out what that means, right? That's information. It's always information, remember, right? So you can use that as like, what about it feels disconnected? Is this actually disconnected, or is it how you're approaching it that feels disconnected, right? Yeah. You're welcome. Okay. Yes. In that case, I will be sending this replay to you later today. And again, you can absolutely book a one-to-one spot with me, so we can go through like what you're working through with Productivity Powerhouse, anything in your life or your business that you want support on. I'm happy to support you. We also do still have a few spots left for Solopreneur CEO. So if you want 6 months of one-to-one support with me starting in January, absolutely book that. And otherwise, a single session would also be lovely. Yeah, so have a wonderful holiday, everyone. Have a wonderful holiday season. And I will see you in your inbox. Thank you. All right. Take care, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. This has been lovely. All right. Bye.